session, the UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia is very pleased to have you all here. Welcome to our session, Water and Climate Change in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. Today we'll be hearing experiences from Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. Today, as we all know, is the last day of the COP, which is a very meaningful day, given the new financial pledges, the national commitments, and the urgent call for climate action made by youth and other important stakeholders. As you may know, at the Water Pavilion, today is Cooperation Day, which really speaks volumes about the transboundary nature of water resources and the future about water management in a changing climate. This focus, as the title says, will be focusing in South Asia, which is the most densely populated region in the world. A quarter of the global population lives here, and there is extreme pressure of this population over water resources, in addition to water variability due to climate change. Today we'll hear about different approaches to water management in this very peculiar change in climate, where extreme weather events and slow onset events are not only affecting water, but the livelihoods and how we react to the changes in the world. Today we have a very good lineup of speakers. We have Dr. Miriam Jackson, who's the program coordinator from the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ICIMOD, and she's based in Nepal. We have also Arinita Shrestha, who's part of the UNICEF team in Nepal, and she's a WASH specialist. We also have Mr. Bharat Lal, who's additional secretary of the Ministry of Jal Shakti in India. And we also have Mr. Muhammad Ibrahim, additional secretary, Ministry of Local Governance, Rural Development, and Cooperatives in Bangladesh. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Miriam Jackson. So she will talk us about climate change and water resources in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. Miriam, thanks for having you here, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Rice. Namaste, everybody. Good afternoon from ICIMOD in Kathmandu, Nepal. And I'm going to start by speaking generally about climate change in the Hindu Kush Himalaya and how it affects the cryosphere, which in turn affects water resources in the region. And could you go to the next slide? Next, please. So the cryosphere is basically everything that's frozen water in the region. It includes glaciers, it includes snow, it includes ice on rivers and lakes, as well as permafrost, which is frozen ground. And we can see that the glaciers are already changing quite significantly. And if we stick to the 1.5 degree limit, which is going to be a challenge, even so the glaciers will lose a third of the volume by 2100. If we don't stick to that limit, if instead we keep on the way we are doing now, they're going to lose 2/3 of this volume. So this is a huge change, but it also means the changes are going to be even faster. So if you're trying to adapt to these changes in the cryosphere and in the runoff that's available, it's going to be hard if it's happening very quickly. And as well as the glaciers changing, also the snow-covered areas are changing. This is a little bit hard to measure because the snow comes and goes every year. But a lot of people are very dependent on runoff from snow cover for irrigation, for agriculture, for drinking water, for hydropower. So this is also a big problem if there's going to be a lot of changes in this. And also another interesting thing about changes in the cryosphere is when we talk about climate change, it's very intangible. We talk about changes in CO2, we talk about changes in temperature, but it's very hard to sort of really think about what that means. But with changes in the cryosphere, especially in glaciers, we can really see that. We can see how much the glaciers are changing from one year to the next, and especially from one decade to the next. Next slide, please. So this is a very simple overview of what's happening with the water cycle and how the cryosphere fits into it. And a lot of times people talk about how people are affected in Asia by the changes in the cryosphere, and they talk about this more than 1 billion people or more than 1 milliard people are affected. I think in many ways this is a little bit misleading, because if you live a long way downstream, the changes aren't big. The glacial component is quite small by then. What we can say, though, is that many, many millions of people are directly affected and will be hugely affected by changes in glaciers and runoff from glaciers and by changes in snow. So if we said suddenly the whole entire population of Norway or New Zealand is going to have problems with water supply, that would be a huge deal. So although we're talking about possibly quite a small percentage of India or Bangladesh or other countries who are going to see these changes, we're talking about millions of people who are going to have to adapt very quickly to big changes in the water resources. Next slide. And one of the things that happens as a glacier changes because of a changing climate, first of all, you get more runoffs. This is a little bit difficult to comprehend. If the glacier is in steady state, used to the same amount of water, you adjust to that. You depend on that for your needs for agriculture and other things. If the climate is changing and the glacier is getting smaller, the discharge increases. So you're getting more water. And this might be good, or possibly it's not good. It could cause problems with floods. Possibly you can't use it because you were used to the amount of water you got before. As time goes on, you then start to get less and less water. You know, you can't keep on getting more water because the glacier is getting smaller and smaller. So at a certain point, which could be a decade or a couple of decades from now, you reach a point, and we call that point peak water. And this very nice graphic is from a recent IPCC report, and it shows you all the different components that go into the runoff. So even once the glaciers are gone, there'll still be water available, but it'll be much less than used to and at a different time of the year. Next slide, please. So we can see from, if you're looking at a decadal timescale or an annual timescale or even a daily timescale, adjusting to life with glaciers that are shrinking or glaciers that have now disappeared completely is going to be quite different. And as this depends on the size of the glacier, you could have actually neighboring valleys, could be at very different parts of this cycle. So in one valley, people are trying to adapt to more and more water. In the next valley, people are adapting to less and less water already. So it's quite hard because people are used to doing things the way they're used to doing it. They grow their crops, they're used to growing, they have the water coming when they need it. To suddenly have water coming earlier or more water or less water, it's going to be quite hard, and the crops that you're used to growing might not be able to adjust to these changes in water. Next, please. As well as glaciers, we also have changes in the amount of snow cover. And this is a little bit harder to measure. So we do have some snow stations in different places in the Hindu Kush Himalaya, including in Langtang, Nepal. And for these to measure what's going on, we really need changes to measure over several years. And what we're seeing already is that snowfall is changing. Generally, there's less snow cover, but often it's coming at different times of the year. We see that often the snow comes later in the season, and in many areas it melts later in the season. Again, if you're dependent on the water for agriculture, for irrigation, and you think it's going to come at a certain time of the year, if it's suddenly coming earlier or later, you need to adjust to that. And that can be hard if you need to then suddenly start growing different kinds of crops. If you have hydropower, the hydropower needs sort of fairly stable amounts of water. So this is also going to be hard to adjust to. We're also seeing more extreme events. Sometimes we're even seeing that you get sudden snowstorms very early in the year. This is also a problem. For example, if you have a livestock that's up at high pastures and suddenly there's a heavy snowfall in August, that's very hard to adapt to. So many people in the Hindu Kush Himalayan downstream areas have adjusted to getting snow at certain times. It's going to be very hard to change. Next, please. So this is a very quick overview to just show you that up in the mountains of the Hindu Kush Himalaya, the glaciers and the snow cover are changing. It's very hard to say there's going to be more or there's going to be less because it really changes from one year to the next, from one region to the next. But we can see that there are big changes happening already. And if we don't stick to the 1.5 limit, the changes are going to be even bigger and we have to adapt to them even faster. Next, please. And this is the kind of work that ICIMOD is doing in the region. ICIMOD is actually working in 8 different countries in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. We've been very involved in COP26, and there is a URL here if you want to read more about the work that ICIMOD is doing, looking at the changes in water resources, the changes in the mountains, and how people are trying to adapt to these changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jackson, for setting the scene so well. And you have really put and reflected what water variability means, especially when we talk about snow cover and glaciers. Well, now to talk about a specific case of a very important program in India, I'm very happy to have Mr. Bharat Lal, who will talk us about the Jal Jeevan mission and how they are strengthening risk-informed water safety planning and community ownership. So, Mr. Bharat, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rice, and thank you for having me here. And I also welcome my co-panelists, Dr. Miriam, Mr. Ibrahim from Bangladesh, and Ms. Maski from Nepal. So thank you all very much. I think Dr. Miriam has made excellent presentation, and I think she has put the whole all issues on the here. In Indian context, let me just make just a couple of submissions. I think I need not to emphasize the importance of Himalayas or Hindu Kush region so far as this whole subcontinent is concerned. As you know, whole country or this subcontinent receives its rainfall because of this Himalayas. Our most of the river system basically they originate from there. So any kind of impact, and this is probably all those people who are connected here, they know the impact of climate change. So any kind of variation in rainfall, precipitation, or less than melting of snow, it has huge impact on the plains. More importantly, I think we have observed that in upper reaches also, in many places we are feeling the scarcity of water. In Indian side, if you see that, I think we have got 7 states basically which are in this region, and in every state you'll find some villages where there is a stress on water sources. In this context, to improve the quality of life and enhance the ease of living of people, our Prime Minister launched Jal Jeevan Mission. And I'll take a couple of minutes to explain that under this mission, the idea is that every household should have clean tap water supply, and that too assured quantity, prescribed quality with adequate pressure on regular basis and long term. So long term sustainability, long term water security is very paramount. And when we see this region, I don't see only Hindu Kush region that people who are living there, but I also see its impact on the whole North India, North and Eastern India we are seeing, and Western India also basically. So we are seeing this huge impact on the water availability, water table, floods, and droughts. Now in this context, Jal Jeevan Mission has been launched. In last 26 months, roughly 54 million households have been provided tap water connection. And when we launched this mission, 3.23 crore households had tap water supply. So as on date, more than 8.5 crores, or you can say 85 million households, are more than 44% rural households are having assured clean water supply in their home. But journey has just begun. And by 2024, we have to ensure clean tap water supply to remaining 105 million households. And then the most important aspect is operation, maintenance, long-term sustainability of sources and of course system. That is the challenge. And here I think I'll take this opportunity to explain what we are doing. We have taken 2, 3, 4 steps. Number one, we have done certain prioritization. And in that prioritization, that let's say schools or Anganwadi centers, our Anganwadi center means Krachin basically, our Ashram Shala means tribal residential schools, public health center, community centers. So all these places, we will not wait till 2024. We are ensuring that clean tap water supply, even a standalone system, higher investment, but we should be doing it on priority. And last year we have launched this campaign, and as on date, when we are sitting here, more than 80% of our schools and 73% of our creches, they have assured tap water supply, along with hand washing facility. Because as we all know that for children, I think hand washing not only from COVID, but it saves them from many, many waterborne diseases and improves their well-being, improves their health. So first thing we have done that this campaign has been started, 100 days campaign, where basically we are ensuring clean tap water for drinking and cooking, hand washing facility. And third thing is that in toilets, running water, tap water or pipe water supply in toilets. And we want to ensure that our future children, our citizens, they should become water sanitation and hygiene enlightened citizens. So in these schools, our creches, our ashram shalas, means tribal residential schools, we are also emphasizing on grey water collection, treatment and reuse, as well as rainwater harvesting. As we all know that in this whole subcontinent and most of part of the world, I think water has become a finite resource. Everybody has started understanding. And in Indian subcontinent, most of the water we receive, majority is basically through rainfall, and some in at least Hindu Kush region is mostly through snowfall. Now, what we are trying to do in India, that we are trying to bring this awareness and trying to make people, partner in this whole campaign, that whatever water we receive in the form of rains or snowfall, I think we have to make arrangement either to collect it either over the ground or under the ground. And in this context, we are also trying to explain to people that instead of having pumping system from bottom to top, especially in Himalaya or Hindu Kush region, let's try to tap water and it should come through gravity. So it is in our interest if we protect, if we preserve, we strengthen our springs, we start managing in much better way our watersheds, our stream sheds, and more importantly, if we continue and sustain our Swachh Bharat mission, means we keep our watersheds and our spring sheds clean. No open defecation, no litter, no use of plastics, so that our treatment cost is much, much lower and people can start getting clean tap water through these systems. So we are working. Under Jal Jeevan Mission, we have also ensured, and that is the soul of the mission, that it should not become a kind of supply-driven and government-sponsored infrastructure development program. It is basically bottom-up approach where village people live. We are working with village community, and there is a method in that not only our provincial government or state government and district administration and public health and department are working. We have partnered with certain NGOs, which are known as implementation support agency at the ground level, and they have to handhold the village community. In each village action plan is prepared, which basically essentially is having 4 components. That is A, water resource management, which includes drinking water source augmentation and strengthening. Second is water supplied infrastructure. Third, very critical element is that grey water collection, treatment and reuse. And fourthly, operation and maintenance, long-term operation and maintenance. So you can see that 2 elements, source sustainability, and second is sustainability of the system in terms of operation and maintenance. We are trying to ensure that part. Second, it is a bottom-up approach where basically we are putting everything at the village level. The village action plan is prepared. For village action plan, funding is ensured, and roughly 13,000 NGOs are involved in helping hand-holding village community to prepare these village action plan. We are also working to have in every village adequate skilled human resources like masons, like plumber, like electrician, like pump operator, motor mechanic, fitter, all those kind of people. We are also training, skilling them and providing them water quality testing kits for carrying out water quality tests, as well as uploading the data, identifying the reason why this contamination has taken place, and preparing community as well as state government officials to take remedial action. So in every village, this kind of 5 women, especially who are health workers or teachers, they are being prepared. So you can visualize a scenario where we are trying to develop 30 to 40 people in every village who are basically much more enlightened on subjects like water management, water supply, grey water, sanitation, hygiene, and operation and maintenance. And thus our approach is that we should develop this water, sanitation, and hygiene enlightened villages. And that is the sure shot of achieving water security. To supplement their effort, there is a convergence of funds as well as various schemes, various endeavor. We are converging them at the village level because there are many programs in Government of India where basically funds are being provided, and a lot of money has been given to village people so that they can. Well, if you allow me to say that we have made a provision of Indian rupees 3,60,000 crore rupees or 51 billion US dollar to be spent on water supply in 5 years, plus 22 billion US dollar, 22 billion US dollar for operation and maintenance. What we have done that this village level institution in India, which is like rural local body or Gram Panchayat, every Gram Panchayat is given money every year in the range of 10 to 12 lakh rupees or $22 billion in 5 years for operation, maintenance, management of water supply and improved sanitation. Idea is that we should work through villages, and what Gandhiji has imagined, that village Swaraj, or basically village itself become a kind of republic where they are able to manage their resources, they are able to take care of all these basic services to improve the quality of life. And our focus is strengthening, empowering, and helping village community to take over these responsibility for which funds and power are functions, as well as functionaries, manpower, human resources are also being provided so that they are able to discharge their duty. In Hindu Kush region, our northern India, or all these 7 states, I think today what we are trying to do is that we should ensure under Jal Jeevan Mission clean tap water supply, even in sub-zero temperature. If you must have seen, many of you, that a couple of days, today, in fact, news came and a lot of, photographs and video are circulating that in Leh and Ladakh, at the height of 13 to 14,000 feet, present temperature is minus 13 or minus 14 degrees centigrade. People are getting clean tap water in those villages. That is the approach we have followed. I think I'll stop here, and I thank you all for giving me this time to share some of these ideas which we are working. And we would like to share whatever our experience is for the benefit of the larger, these countries and the people and the institutions. In this whole endeavor, UNICEF India office has been a great supporter, great help. In fact, this 100 days campaign, they are our partner, and their regional offices, state offices, they are fully involved and helping in achieving this goal so that we are able to improve the quality of life and ease of living, especially women and children, especially young child. And I'm thankful to UNICEF for this task, and they are working with us. So thank you very much, and wish you all very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bharat. It was really impressive to hear the scale of the Jal Jeevan mission and the investments that are put forward to expand the water supply, and of course to include O&M into that. And hopefully we'll have time to chat at the end of this session. So without further ado, now we're gonna move over to Nepal, and we have my colleague Arinita Shrestha, who will be speaking about engaging children on risk-sensitive WASH programming in Nepal. So with that, Arinita, I'll hand it over to you, the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rais. Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well, thank you.
So namaste and greetings to everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and happy to be with the expert panelist here, and for me to really share how everything we do whatever we are sharing right now has a meaningful engagement of youth and children. So my title is Engaging Children in Risk-Sensitive WASH Programming in Nepal. Next slide, please. So as you know, like Nepal is the host of world-renowned Himalayan range and major rivers that caters to water needs and ecosystem of South Asia and its national economy through tourism industry. So thus, it is one of the most sensitive and vulnerable country with regards to climate change and has an effect on the entire region. Next slide, please. As you know, like Nepal goes through a lot of small and large-scale disasters, which are climate-induced, like avalanches, cold waves, flash floods, landslides, which has a major impacts all over the country. And if you see, like 1/3 of those people directly impacted are children. Next slide, please. And the recent study that we have done all over the country shows like children and youth have been reporting climate extremes, which are increasing day by day. And all over the country, if you see in the map, like there's increased rainfall, landslide, floods, droughts, cold waves, which is increasing day by day as reported by children. Next slide, please. And also looking at the safety of the children, over 82% or majority of the children who are around 800 whom we surveyed, they feel that they are at risk of one or more hazards. And those that were killed or injured, more than 50% of them were children or youths. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the WASH facilities itself, Nepal has made a very good milestones of achieving access to water and sanitation. But because of these climate-induced disasters, we are questioned about the sustainability day by day. And it's also evident from the children's survey, which reports that over 60%, they feel that there is a reduced quantity of water, and around 50% say that there is reported reduced quality of water. Next slide, please. So what we see is engaging children and youths, it's so important with this evidence. And in Nepal, like we've tried to engage children and youths involved in WASH behavior change programs. And to name one is school-led total sanitation, which is one of the Nepal initiators' agenda, where we have included children as change agents in achieving open defecation-free movement of Nepal. However, ensuring children's active participation in risk-sensitive programming has been limited. Next slide, please. So the child-led risk-sensitive programming is an approach where we provide opportunities for children to understand risk-related climate and other hazards and be part of the risk prevention, adaptation, and mitigation works, change their perception towards their life and living, and be part of the society to contribute to the bigger picture of climate change and its interventions. Next slide, please. So one tool that we have been using is the child-centered risk mapping, where we are engaging school children and their teachers and their guardians to really understand the process of including or engaging on hazards, vulnerability, and capacity identification of the communities, including water quality testing, and then bringing that into a map to present it as an evidence to the stakeholders to come up with an action plan for an implementation in their communities. Next slide, please. So this initiation has been done since 2013 as a pilot program, and over the years, we have developed the child-centered risk mapping assessment tool, which has been scaled at community-based programs and WASH interventions around the country. And one of the strategic action has been on water quality testing, which has really empowered the children to really generate evidence or show evidences that WASH interventions are so much needed for their safety and security. Next slide, please. And one big engagement, I just want to give an example, is around the cholera outbreak that happened around 2015 and 17, which also got an international attention, where we engaged over 2,000 children to test more than around 3,000 samples to really identify hotspots to contain the cholera situation, which was one of the most engaging engagement of the students to really influence the stakeholders to take action. Next slide, please. So we have been successfully implementing these tools in the Wash in Schools programs, in outbreak programs and DRR programs that we have, and in Wash general programs like Water Safe Communities that we are really advocating as a movement. As a result, it has an impact initiated on a significant improvement of hygiene and sanitation behaviors and adapting mitigation and adaptation measures at community level. So as of now, more than 5,000 children has been directly engaged in child-centered risk mapping, which is quite an engaging and influencing evidence of children's and youth engagement. Next slide, please. So these are just samples of those risk maps that's been done as an evidence to really influence the stakeholders and communities to take actions by the children, and seasonal calendars of yearly hazards as a reminder for children and the communities. Next slide, please. So overall, I would like to say that engaging children and youths through child-centered risk assessment tool has been proven to be a very effective method to trigger issues of climate and WASH at a local level and to take action. And we will continue to support the government and communities to engage children and youths to advocate same at the local level, including from planning to implementation, to really achieve the goals of WASH SDG targets. Next slide, please. Thank you. And lastly, I would like to quote yesterday's event from UNICEF, where we heard children and youth are not leaders of tomorrow. They're leaders of today, because tomorrow might never come if we, together with children, do not act. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Arenita. And by closing with this very important and highlighting this quote that came from the event yesterday, it's really important. And I'm very glad to hear about this child-centered risk mapping. And if we have time, I'll ask you a question about the gender aspect of it, because I think it's really interesting. And our final panelist is Mr. Mohammed Ibrahim. He's the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Local Governance, Rural Development, and Cooperatives in Bangladesh. And he will be speaking about climate-related water safety hazards, understanding fecal contamination risk. And I think this is a very important topic that has been overlooked, especially in the climate agenda. So, Mr. Mohammed Ibrahim, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes Lopez Relo, distinguished panelists and respected audience. I feel privileged to be amongst you this evening. Climate change is the most significant challenge of the 21st century, with the potential to cause significant human and economic damage. Climate change is manifested through rising temperature, rising sea levels, and shrinking mountain glaciers in Hindu Kush Himalaya region, causing significant changes in our living patterns. Occurrence of extreme weather events have become frequent, coupled with growing population and land use patterns. These extreme events are causing frequent cyclones, floods, waterlogging, and longer droughts during dry and summer seasons. Climate is bringing changes in our hydrology. Dear friends, water being the most essential element for living, the stock of groundwater and surface water are at risk of various climate-induced pollutions like microbiological and chemical contamination, salinity, depletion of oxygen and other nutrients, etc. Provision of water and sanitation is critical to overall health of a nation. Ensuring that these services remain functional and deliver public health protection is a national priority worldwide. Bangladesh too, like other countries in the region, has given utmost importance to provision of safely managed water and sanitation to all its citizens. This has been observed over the decades that only safe and adequate water cannot ensure good health. Sanitation, hygiene, and behavior change is of utmost importance to have a foolproof system of water supply to contain fecal contamination. Respected audience, Bangladesh is not a water-stressed country. The problem we face is with seasonal unavailability and quality of water. Links between events associated with climate change and disease are well documented. Temperature rise has a positive link with rise in enteric diseases. Our experiences show prevalence of waterborne diseases are more in summer and dry months of the year and during post-flood times. Our findings show that adequate water supply and water quality, coupled with proper sanitation and hygiene, can reduce diseases like diarrhea, cholera, and other diseases that generate from fecal contamination of water. Findings show that provisions of safe and continuous piped supplies can reduce the risk of fecal contamination most. Keeping this information in mind, Government of Bangladesh has devised an elaborate plan to contain fecal contamination of water sources and water supply systems. To keep the water sources free from contaminations, periodic and routine surveillance of water points have been taken up in rural areas. We have established water quality monitoring laboratories in all 64 districts of Bangladesh with equipment and technical manpower. Moreover, rural piped water supply has been given priority over point water supply in rural areas and communities. Technological adjustments in existing water points are being made available in rural areas like arsenic and iron removal devices. It has been observed that a distance of 10 meters between water point and sanitary latrines can protect water point from fecal contamination. Local level masons and plumbers working to build low budget homes for the poor have been informed of this through their associations. Twin pit latrines with septic tanks and off-site fecal sludge management is a cost-effective and relatively easier way to contain fecal contamination. We have taken up nationwide program to this end, which will focus on ultra-poor portion of the population to provide them with safely managed sanitation, which will ultimately protect water from fecal contamination. In our 4 megacities, water and sewerage authorities are giving emphasis on using surface water through treatment instead of groundwater, which is depleting and gradually getting contaminated with high levels of chemical pollutants. In capital city Dhaka, 30% of our water supply comes from treated water of rivers. In Chattogram, it is 90%. In Khulna, it is 50%, and in Rajshahi, it is 30%. To have our rivers protected from pollution and encroachment, 2 high-powered committees headed by 2 cabinet ministers have been formed, one for preparation of river master plans and another for monitoring the tasks to be carried out by various agencies to protect the rivers according to respective master plans. We are emphasizing on treated surface water in other cities and towns where flowing rivers are available. Fecal sludge management will play the most important role in protecting our water sources and water systems from fecal contamination. We are having sewerage systems in parts of Dhaka and taken up projects in order to have these systems in other cities within 2025. Bangladesh is already a zero open defecation country, and we are using all our efforts to sustain this achievement. We have devised an institutional and regulatory framework for fecal sludge management. We are emphasizing on citywide inclusive sanitation and other modern concepts for a foolproof urban sanitation system. We have introduced public-private partnership initiatives to manage municipal and sanitary waste in many of our cities and towns. We have devised water safety plans for Department of Public Health Engineering for rural areas and water and sewerage authorities and municipalities in urban localities. Our building plan approving authorities are aware of fecal contamination and approve plans following appropriate procedures. Dear friends, climate change is causing displacement of people from their generation-old natural habitats to urban slums. Climate change is impacting vulnerable elderly, women, and children in terms of their earnings, education, and empowerment. We must find out ways to resettle those who have been displaced due to climate change. We must educate displaced children, re-employ displaced women to empower them, and give relief to displaced elderly. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in her speech in COP26, has said, we need to increase knowledge sharing, research, and capacity building, and technology transfer. Let's start sharing knowledge and know-how among countries of Hindu Kush Himalaya region. With these words, I would like to conclude. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Muhammad Ibrahim. This was very, very interesting. And I'm very conscious about the time, that we only have 5 minutes before the closing of this session. So I think I'll have a couple of questions, but we need to be quick. And I guess I'll have the first question, or I think I'm gonna do a summary, because I think we're gonna extend over if I start asking questions. So in these sessions, we have heard about what it really means, the impact of climate change on the snow cover and the glacier runoff, and the impact that is having and will have on agriculture, on livelihoods in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. So that part is really important, because that is the nurture of rivers in the region. We saw, of course, the really ambitious target of the Jal Jeevan mission to really provide tap water to, if I have my notes correctly, to 105 million households by 2024. So it's really, really impressive. And I think that the long sustainability of the Jal Jeevan mission, at the heart of it, is water conservation, because with the population of India and the demand for water, you really need to focus, and it was mentioned, to keep clean the watersheds and to provide really the best and most efficient use of the water's resources. Also, we heard from Nepal about this tool that focus on having children as doing this risk mapping and focusing on the children's sensitivities related to WASH and climate change. And I think in this specific tool, in this specific analysis, the gender aspects are really important, because WASH, especially on the sanitation part, has really differentiated aspects and should be treated a bit differently between boys and girls. And lastly, we heard about the work that Bangladesh is doing, especially to really safely manage sanitation interventions. We saw that with increase of flooding and storm surges, and it's really impacting and could impact, especially septic tanks and latrines. So it's really interesting to see this plan. And of course, this contamination, and if it's not treated correctly, will deal to health impacts like cholera that it was mentioned. So with that, I'd like to close by saying that from the UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia, our main work on WASH and climate change is really focusing on that, on really trying to support governments and communities, vulnerable communities, to really have a sustained supply of water, even in a changing climate. And for that, we are really very keen to keep supporting government of India, government of Bangladesh, and government of Nepal. The long-lasting relations that we have with them is really important for us. And we're going to keep pushing to have children and youth at the center of the water programs in the region. So with that, thank you again. Thanks for joining. If you can tweet, if you can share in your social media platforms, we'll be happy. And please, if you have any questions, we can do a bilateral with anybody listening and attending this session. Thank you very much and have a good day. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot in this panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate all the
everybody.
panelists.